They served me that subpoena right in Big Mama's kitchen during Sunday dinner, smelling like fried catfish and justice. The lawyers wanted me to testify about how Imani's niece had deleted compliance files and blamed legacy systems. My cousin looked up from her collards and said, "Baby, make him pay for every tear you cried in that bathroom." 1. Do. The paper felt heavy in my hands, heavier than it should have been for something so thin. My aunt was at the stove humming Precious Lord, while she checked on her peach cobbler, and the whole house smelled like butter and vindication. I read the first line twice. Shareholders versus Apex Solutions, technical testimony requested from Simone Richardson. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I'd spent so many nights shaking in bathroom stalls, crying into paper towels that scratched my face, wondering if I was crazy for seeing what nobody else wanted to see. Now the law firm that charged $400 an hour wanted my truth in a deposition room with court reporters and sworn oaths. My little cousin Destiny, home from Spelman for the weekend, leaned over my shoulder and whispered, "Auntie Simone, is this about that bougie girl who got you fired?" I nodded. Big Mama set down her wooden spoon and crossed the kitchen, her house shoes slapping against the linoleum she just mopped that morning to Shirley Caesar. She put both hands on my shoulders, looked me dead in my eyes, and said what she always said when the world tried us. "The truth don't need no approval, baby. It just needs a witness." But to understand how I ended up at that table with legal papers next to the sweet tea and 7-layer dip, we have to go back 8 years to a Tuesday morning in August when Atlanta was so hot the asphalt on Peachtree Street looked like it was melting. I'd walked into Apex Solutions wearing my interview blazer, my locks freshly retwisted, my resume printed on the good paper from Staples. They'd hired me on the spot. The CEO, Marcus Webb, was a brother from the West End who'd built his logistics company from a storage unit and a dream, and he needed someone who could keep his systems from crashing every time they signed a new client. I became that someone. For 5 years, I was the woman who kept the lights on. I wrote scripts at 3 in the morning when migrations failed. I caught ransomware signatures in server logs before legal even knew what malware was. I fixed problems so quietly that people forgot there'd been a problem at all. Marcus used to bring me coffee on late nights, the good kind from the shop on Auburn Avenue, and tell me I was the backbone of everything he'd built. I believed him. I shouldn't have. The day everything changed started normal enough. It was a Wednesday in March, and I was in the server room checking a cooling system that kept triggering false alarms. My phone buzzed. Marcus had sent a company-wide email with a photo attached. Him and his new daughter-in-law, Chelsea Webb, standing in front of a sunrise over Tulum. The subject line read, "Exciting leadership announcement." My stomach dropped before I even opened it. Chelsea had married Marcus's son Devin after meeting him at some corporate wellness retreat in Mexico, the kind where people paid $3,000 to do yoga and pretend juice cleanses could fix capitalism. 3 months later she had a title, Chief Innovation Officer. I'd met her twice. Once at the holiday party where she'd asked me if I did hair on the side because my locks were so ethnic and cute. The second time in the break room when she'd looked at my lunch, greens and cornbread from Big Mama's Sunday batch and said, "Wow, I could never eat that heavy during the day. I'd just crash." I'd smiled and kept chewing. That was my first mistake. Chelsea started slow. She called meetings about modernizing our digital footprint and brought in consultants from firms that charged $10,000 to tell us things I'd already said in emails nobody read. She wore white pantsuits to the data center and called our mainframe vintage in a not cute way. During her first all-hands presentation, she stood under the fluorescent lights with a smile so bright it could have powered the building and said, "We need fresh perspectives. Legacy thinking is holding us back." I felt every developer in that room flinch. Legacy wasn't a neutral word in tech. It meant old, obsolete, expendable. It meant me. I should have seen it then. But I was busy fixing the vendor portal she'd broken during her streamlining initiative. She'd moved our entire client database to a cloud service without verifying encryption protocols or reading the terms of service. When I flagged it in an email with Marcus copied, she replied to the whole thread. "Simone, I appreciate your concerns, but we hired experts for a reason. Let's trust the process." The experts were 3 guys fresh out of a coding boot camp who didn't know what a DNS record was. I spent the next 6 weeks quietly patching their mistakes, working doubles to keep invoices processing, while Chelsea posted LinkedIn updates about disrupting outdated models. My mama had always told me, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. But I kept giving Chelsea chances, kept thinking maybe she'd learn, kept telling myself Marcus wouldn't let his company fall apart for the sake of family politics. That was my second mistake. The breaking point came on a Friday in late October. I was reviewing compliance logs when I noticed something missing. An entire folder of vendor contracts and security audits. Called IT. They said Chelsea had requested the files archived 3 days earlier because they were cluttering the shared drive. I went straight to her office. She was filming something for her Instagram, talking about authentic leadership, while adjusting a ring light. I knocked. She looked annoyed. I kept my voice steady, professional. The way I'd been taught to speak in corporate spaces where being too direct could get you labeled aggressive. I explained that the archived files contained contracts we needed for our upcoming audit, that some of those agreements were still active, that deleting them could put us in violation of client SLAs. Chelsea tilted her head like I was speaking a language she didn't care to translate. Simone, those files were from like 2018. Nobody's checking contracts that old. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Ma'am, our biggest client renewed their agreement last spring. If we can't produce that documentation, we're in breach. She waved a hand, dismissing me like I was a server who'd brought the wrong appetizer. I'm sure we have backups somewhere. Besides, the legal team never mentioned this was urgent. I left her office knowing exactly what was coming. Not the shape of it, not the specifics, but the inevitability. 3 weeks later, our audit came back flagged. The compliance team couldn't locate vendor agreements for 5 major clients. Chelsea called an emergency meeting and stood in front of the executive team with a PowerPoint she'd clearly made that morning. It appears our legacy systems failed to properly archive critical documents. This is exactly why we need to modernize our infrastructure and move away from outdated protocols. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. Everyone knew who managed the systems. Everyone knew who'd been there since the beginning. I sat in that conference room watching Marcus nod along, watching the other executives take notes, and I realized something that made my throat tight. They wanted to believe her. It was easier to blame invisible systems than to admit the boss's daughter-in-law had deleted files to cover her incompetence. That night, I sat in my car in the parking garage for 45 minutes, gospel playing low on the radio, and cried so hard my silk press frizzed. Then I went home, logged into the backup server I quietly maintained for years, and verified that every single deleted file was still there, time-stamped and encrypted. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. The calendar invite came on a Tuesday afternoon with no warning. Quick sync with HR, 4:30, no agenda. I knew what it meant the way you know a storm's coming before the first drop of rain falls. I walked into that conference room and there was Chelsea, perched on the edge of the desk in her athleisure and her confidence, next to Greg from Human Resources who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Simone, thanks for making time. Chelsea started, voice dripping with fake warmth. We're restructuring some roles to align with our future-focused vision. Future-focused meant young. It meant cheap. It meant disposable. Greg slid the severance packet across the table like it might burn him. 3 months of pay, outplacement services, and we'll expedite your COBRA enrollment, he mumbled. I looked at Chelsea. She was smiling. Any questions? She asked. I had 1,000. I had 5 years' worth of swallowed words and ignored warnings in 3 a.m. Fixes that saved her reputation. But I only asked one. How long? She blinked confused. How long until everything breaks? I stood up, unclipped my badge, and set it on the table next to that useless severance offer. 15 minutes, I said. That's how long you have before every script I wrote to keep this place running stops compensating for your mistakes. Chelsea's smile flickered. Simone, let's not be dramatic. I walked out. No yelling, no threats, just my heels clicking against tile, and the sound of something irreversible beginning. I didn't go home. I walked to Pascal's, ordered fried chicken and sweet tea, and sat by the window where I could see the Apex building in the distance. My phone started buzzing at 5:15. Texts from coworkers. Systems down, vendor portal crashed, invoices frozen. Chelsea had tried calling twice. I let it go to voicemail. By 6:30, the first client complaint hit social media. By 8, 3 more followed. They served me that subpoena right in Big Mama's kitchen during Sunday dinner, smelling like fried catfish and justice, and this time I knew exactly what it meant. The lawyers wanted me to testify about how Chelsea had deleted compliance files and blamed legacy systems. My cousin looked up from her collards and said, "Baby, make him pay for every tear you cried in that bathroom." 1. He. Do. I showed up to that deposition 3 weeks later in my Sunday best. A navy suit Big Mama had pressed that morning, my locks pulled back neat, and a leather portfolio that contained 8 years of receipts. Every ignored email, every flagged risk, every time Chelsea had overridden my warnings. The lawyers asked their questions and I answered in my corporate voice, the one I'd perfected for white boardrooms and skeptical auditors. I explained how I'd flagged the compliance violations. I produced the original deletion request with Chelsea's name on it. I walked them through exactly how her modernization had cost the company 6 clients and $2 million in breach penalties. But here's what I didn't tell them in that deposition. What I saved for the shareholder meeting Marcus was forced to hold 2 months later. I'd done something else before I walked out that day. While Chelsea was busy filming her goodbye video about wellness journeys, I'd sent a detailed technical brief to Apex's 3 biggest competitors, outlining every system vulnerability she'd created, every client pain point, every gap in service. Not proprietary code, nothing illegal, just enough insight for them to know exactly when to poach. By the time the shareholders voted Chelsea out and suspended Marcus for gross negligence, I'd already signed a consulting contract with Sterling Tech for triple my old salary, working from my sunroom in my bonnet, answering only to people who called me by my full name and said thank you. The last time I saw the Apex building, it had a lease available sign in the window. I drove past without slowing down. Mary J. Blige playing on the radio, Big Mama's peach cobbler waiting for me at home. Justice tastes sweet when you let the truth do the screaming. And I plan to savor every single bite. If this journey resonated with you today, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know what part of the world you're repping. I need to know who's riding with me. Your words down there might be the exact spark someone needs to keep their fire burning when they feel like giving up. We share these truths so nobody has to feel like they're fighting in the dark alone. Stay woke, watch the company you keep, and never forget that your life is a reflection of the moves you choose to make. Stay solid, you feel me?